Welcome to episode 22-03 of the Fairfield Bay Gadfly Presents. Actually, the podcast was scheduled to be uploaded yesterday, but technical difficulties, i.e. I ran out of ink for my printer, caused a delay. I appreciate each of you who listen to my rantings and opinions, and I would deeply appreciate it if you would share the link with just one person before the day is out, or tomorrow, or the next day. I don't care. Just share it, please. Now, let's start off with some fun facts from history. On March 7th, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell received his first patent for the telephone. I think you might be surprised at how the telephone has evolved, much less cell phones. On March 7th, 1936, Adolf Hitler sent German troops into the Rhineland, violating the Locarno Pact of 1925 between Germany, Belgium, Britain, France, and Italy, which came about as a result of the Treaty of Versailles ending World War I. We all know how that turned out, and now we have a very similar situation playing out in Ukraine. On March 7, 2012, a true milestone was reached when the Oreo cookie celebrated its 100th birthday. We still continue to either drink milk or dump the cookie. What do you do when you're eating Oreos? Besides getting fat. It's now time to take a look at the happenings in the world, whether we like it or not. Obviously, not enough people of the world have learned from the adage, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. In 1982 through 83, President Ronald Reagan famously referred to the then Soviet Union as the quote-unquote evil empire. President Reagan made a policy of repeating this phrase for an extended period of time, and eventually, between 1988 through 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. Numerous former Soviet republics had declared their independence from Russia, including Ukraine. President Reagan knew between 1977 through 1983 that the world had been mesmerized by George Lucas's science fiction Star Wars movies, and the use of the term evil empire was easily visualized around the world. The term continues to provide visualization with the invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign nation, by Russia. It doesn't take much imagination to see Putin as either Darth Vader or, better yet, the Emperor. However, we must remember that Putin has never claimed to be anything different. We need to look at how not only American, but all world administrations have treated Russia, to include all of their oligarchs and illegal activities over the past few decades. Now, all of a sudden, most of the world governments are seemingly shocked and appalled by the actions of both public and private sectors of Russia. We all know that both have been leaders in the illegal trade of arms, currency, drugs, and sexual trafficking, just to name a few. Now, these shocked and appalled governments are chasing down super yachts, seeking multi-million-dollar mansions, and any other assets they can identify. My question to each of you at this point is, why now? Were all of the shocked and appalled governments okay with such illegal activities as long as Russia kept to itself? Now is the time to strangle the Russian economy. Now is the time to cut off all commerce with Russia. Now is the time to avoid a modern-day Munich Pact. On the latter issue, I refer to the lead-up to Hitler's invasion of the Sudetenland area of Czechoslovakia, with the excuse that most of the population were quote-unquote ethnically German. Putin is using the same logic for the invasion of Ukraine, that the populists are actually Russian, and Ukraine is merely a part of Russia. Britain, Italy, and France thought they were avoiding a major war, and they had supposedly brokered, quote-unquote, peace in our time. We all know how that worked out. At the present time, Putin has declared Ukrainian airspace as a no-fly zone. He has taken over the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. He has targeted civilian centers. Pretty soon, the railroad boxcars will be loaded with Ukrainians to be transported to modern-day gulags. The world is seeing history repeat itself. Except this time, unlike Hitler, Putin does have nuclear weapons and has already played the nuclear forces alert card. The world cannot allow a modern Munich pact. Those of us who remember our atomic bomb proof elementary school desk of duck and cover exercises cannot allow our grandchildren to experience anything remotely approaching such pointless exercises. If any of the world governments have the guts to take the lead, I would encourage them to do so. Putin knows that the American administration is weak and disjointed. Britain is rapidly devolving into a Muslim state. France cares more about cheese, wine, and holidays. Canada is led by an impotent leader, and the list of weak governments goes on and on. Putin is clearly taking advantage of such confusion between nation states, and no one is truly taking the lead in stopping him. In the coming days, we will see the price of gas, food, and most essential items going through the roof. Putin's invasion of Ukraine will affect each and every one of us, and not in a good way. I guess it'll be time to clean our ARs, sharpen our knives, and fortify the hills, so to speak, and learn how to scream, Wolverines! Now, on a national level, well, Blow and No-Go Joe has now presented his liberal ideas for the nation in the State of the Union address. Think about it. The only unity that came out of that speech was the Ukrainian invasion. If it wasn't for Putin's madness, it would have been a usual liberal diatribe which would have faded away the following day. Instead, Sleepy Joe took advantage of something he should have at least attempted to stop before it happened. If I remember correctly, Slow Joe has taken credit for correctly predicting the Russian invasion. Well, why didn't he do something about it? As previously pointed out, the costs of living on all fronts will be escalating at an unprecedented rate. Already, according to the AAA Auto Club, U.S. gas prices are rising at the fastest rate ever. The United Nations, for what anything they say is worth, has reported that world food prices have risen 24.1% over the past year. It appears that things are already in a tenuous position, much less being exacerbated by the Ukraine issue. The White House press secretary said, quote, "The reason why the price of gas is going up is not because of steps the president has taken. They are because Putin is invading Ukraine," close quote. As a reminder, gas prices rose $1.14 from Biden's inauguration to the day Putin invaded. Although some economic sanctions have been imposed, it's time to completely cut off Russia from the rest of the economic world. Already, Russian citizens are making a run on their ATMs and preparing for the worst. Here in the U.S., the current administration must open all available oil pipelines, and they must open offshore oil and gas drilling and production to allow the U.S. to again become energy self-sufficient. It's one thing to say, I know what will happen, and then not do anything about it. The U.S. is facing one of the greatest crises of the 21st century, with one of the weakest administrations in history. As stated in the international section, practice screaming, "Wolverines!" Now, on a state level, from the state capitol, the ledge continues to stumble through the fiscal session. After much moaning and machinations, the budget for the liberal PBS television station, AETN, was finally approved, while at the same time, the House side of the ledge approved $1 million in public funds to private pregnancy resource centers, some who want funding, some that don't. Whether your stance is pro or anti-abortion, the fact that public funds are being appropriated for such purposes is not a good sign. I fully anticipate that the regular session in 2024 will see Texas-styled anti-abortion legislation being introduced and passed. Once that happens, all the liberals will wail and whine about the quote-unquote rights of the mother without regard for the unborn children. The question is, will those funds for private pregnancy resource centers currently being considered then be accepted by pro-abortion pregnancy centers for the use in advising women of how to avoid such a Texas-style abortion bill in Arkansas? It would seem to me that the ledge will be shooting themselves in the foot by unnecessarily opening a financial Pandora's box. On the upside of happenings at the state capitol, we don't have the governor daily imploring folks to get vaccinated. Although the Hutchinson administration, along with the Department of Human Services and the Arkansas Department of Education, have announced a new preschool reading program. The program calls for parents or guardians to spend 10 minutes a day reading to their young children, which is a wonderful idea. Such a program appears to be a good idea. However, how have we reached this point in history without such a program? I grew up with my parents reading to me and encouraging me to read, which I did. I did the same thing with my children, and most everyone I know has had the same experience. The proposed program will provide quote-unquote toolkits for, get this, child care centers, schools, pediatricians, and anyone willing to promote reading to the children. Wait a minute. They start out talking about parents and guardians reading to children. Then they are pulling in all of these other entities. How much in state funds will be expended on these toolkits themselves? Not to mention the cost of promotion of the program. Once again, the state and various other entities are being promoted at the same level of parents and guardians. This is nothing more than the creeping socialism of pre-K programs. The state should provide the schools for formal education, but it's the responsibility of parents and guardians to equip their children to excel in school. My parents did it. I did it. So should every parent or guardian without the intrusion of the state. The state uses, "it's for the children," not unlike some parents do in divorce proceedings. It's time to cease public funding for responsibilities faced by parents and guardians. Now, on a local level, here at the gateway to the Ozarks in Fairfield Bay, the mayor once again brought up the zombie ordinance of annexation. Well, sort of. What was said was that other than the proposed maps of possible annexation she provided at the City Council January workshop, there was nothing new to report at the February 28th workshop, except the proposed deal between the buyer and the seller of the county property in question had not yet even closed the deal. In other words, the pro-annexation forces within the city must have realized that until the property sale closes, the city doesn't know for sure what area they should consider for annexation, which is a surprisingly rational move by the city. Does that mean annexation has gone away? Of course not. There are folks on the city council and in city government who think our tiny little Ozark hamlet should have the same funding and services similar to cities like Harrison, Hot Springs, and others of equal size, which Fairfield Bay isn't. We need only look at the city's attempts within the last year with the smoke and mirrors alcohol tax and the short-term rental ordinance. The city government has yet to look within itself to determine the best way to spend city funds. If it means reducing the size of city services, offices, and staff, then do so. At the present time, nothing is being done to address the situation publicly. It's time for the backroom politics of City Hall to cease. Wait a minute. It is City Hall, and politics does happen in City Hall. Local politics, to be exact. Does the use of community club buildings for local political purposes conflict with the recently passed quote-unquote resolution by the club board of directors, which does not allow local politics in club-owned buildings? Or is it do as I say, not as I do? Okay, Jeannie C. Riley, I believe that's your cue. I thank each of you for listening today. Please join us again and feel free to share the podcast with others. This is the Fairfield Bay Gadfly signing off for now.